Let us now revisit the so-called certainties and self-evident truths. We are told we are the offspring of a universe born by chance from the explosion of an atom, descended from a fish that evolved, dwelling upon the surface of a spinning sphere adrift in a vast cosmic sea. These truths resemble, with uncanny precision, a line of dominoes arranged with exquisite care. Touch one, and the entire structure collapses. A single false move unleashes dire consequences, shaking the very foundation of all we thought we knew. Earlier we spoke of modes of thought, and how a person may fall victim to error in reasoning itself, an error that strengthens mental programming, barring true freedom of thought and compelling us to accept conjectural models as axioms. Yet when one strives to break free from such programming, he becomes ensnared by conflicting beliefs that may drive him to madness. It is much like what is called a lucid dream. You are asleep, you dream, and in the midst of the dream you realize you are dreaming. It is less a delight than a terror, for the conscious mind awakens alongside the unconscious, producing what is known as cognitive dissonance. In waking life, far from dreams, dissonance arises when new information collides with long-held convictions, leaving us incapable of accepting it, even when it shines as plainly as the midday sun. To unshackle oneself from mental programming is no easy task. It is almost impossible to persuade a person that all his knowledge, all he has ever learned, is false, and that he must embrace a truth utterly at odds with his certainties. Mark Twain once said, "It is easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled." This is the shock of awakening, akin to rousing from deep slumber, when for a few disoriented moments one cannot tell dream from reality, illusion from truth. It is never easy to liberate oneself from ideas ingrained since childhood, to vault over mental barriers, and to admit that one has lived within a grand deception. Such dissonance manifests when new knowledge begins striking at the very foundations of our certainties, our creeds, our axioms. The mind, unable to bear the conflict, often flees into denial, rejecting the new, however radiant and undeniable it may be. Thus, the first step in demolishing the stifling temple of mental programming is to muster courage enough to doubt and to begin posing questions, no matter how simple, absurd, or childlike they may seem. For example, is Earth truly a sphere revolving about the sun, as we have been taught? In the previous chapter, we recounted the evidences for Earth's sphericity and its motion around the sun. But before we proceed further, let us agree not to entangle religion here, at least not yet, except as guidance we shall consider later, for religion lies above reason, and it is unfit to employ what transcends reason as proof within reason's domain. This, indeed, was the very mistake of Muslim scholars who sought to force Quranic verses into harmony with scientific perspectives, even when at times the meaning suggested otherwise. And as Ibn called unobserved, the vanquished ever clings to the ways of the victor, hence their perilous act of fabrication, bending the immutable current to align with the dubious conclusions of science. Take for instance the verse, "He wraps the night over the day and wraps the day over the night." Some claim this as proof of Earth's sphericity. Yet this is but interpretation behind a curtain, an evident distortion, twisting the text to conform with science's assertion of Earth's roundness. In time we shall examine such matters in a more reflective manner, as we have promised. But for now, we have reached the stone the builders once rejected, which became the cornerstone. For when you begin to doubt a self-evident truth you had never dared to question, the experience is like a sudden blow to the back of the head, dizzying, painful, leaving you suspended between waking and fainting, between belief and disbelief, reeling from a strike whose hand you did not see. And most of those who first ventured into the world of the flat earth felt that jolt at the very outset, then plunge ever deeper in search of evidence to disprove such a deranged notion, clinging to the hope that reason might yet rescue their minds. Yet they failed to notice that they had stepped into a sea of quicksand, where every effort to resist only dragged them further down. The first reaction when we hear the phrase flat Earth is usually a stifled, mocking chuckle, which quickly swells into unabashed laughter. How could the Earth be flat if the sun sets beyond it? How could it be flat when no one has ever tumbled from its edge? Questions such as these, dripping with derision, seem to confirm that those who hold such beliefs are trapped in the Stone Age of thought. For though we live in an age beyond space and atom, some minds remain convinced that the Earth is flat, not spherical. Here, astonishment rises into exasperated wonder. How are such people not confined within the walls of asylums? From where do they conjure such primitive ideas? How could they ever be persuaded by such nonsense, and why? Do their very eyes not testify to the truth? And so we investigate further, half expecting to laugh louder, or perhaps to weep. Once more, we return to the unsettling question: is the Earth truly a globe revolving around the sun, as we have always been told? It may sound so ludicrous as to provoke laughter, for only the ancient civilizations clung to the belief in a flat Earth, sketching their maps upon pure reason. Because they felt no movement of the Earth beneath their feet and saw the celestial bodies wheel above, they believed the Earth motionless, enthroned as the center of the cosmos. We cannot, in fairness, heap scorn upon these naive thinkers and their fables, for they simply had not attained the scientific knowledge that later ages would uncover. They imagined themselves correct, no different from the lunatic who believes the world insane. But what if we dared to turn the lens inward, to strip away the programming of the mind and invert our perspective entirely? Might we discover that it is we who have failed to reach the heights of knowledge once held by those same simpletons we mock? For with all our modern science, we cannot raise a pyramid, nor embalm a corpse to endure for millennia. Their hidden accomplishments whisper of mysteries greater still, knowledge deliberately obscured, erased from the scroll of history. If ancient civilizations achieved what we cannot, then where did their sciences vanish? Why were they not handed down through the generations? Was there some catastrophe that carved a gulf in time, forcing humanity to begin anew? Is what we call ancient history truth at all, or merely speculation, or worse, deliberate falsehood and myth? Let us then approach the matter through the image of the scales. A balance has two pans. If the weights are equal, they rise in harmony. Yet more often one sinks as the other ascends, for the measure is unequal. The merchant uses his scales to value his wares, but he may also be a thief, and thus the way to deception. So too with knowledge. It can be rigged, manipulated, sold to us by deceitful merchants who lead us into mental servitude, instilling false certainties to serve their designs. Thus, free thought is the sole path to unveiling truth, unclouded by any false perspective. It is the art of shaping opinions upon the pillars of science, reason, and logic, without permitting them to be swayed by authority, custom, or any form of rigid dogmatism. That is to say, it rejects blind allegiance to an idea merely because it was proposed by someone, refusing to treat it as beyond discussion or immune to doubt unless supported by evidence that withstands scrutiny. We often absorb knowledge from the external world as though it were a seamless whole, without dissecting it into its essential elements: opinion, inference, and fact. In doing so, we inevitably fall into error, for we lose the ability to discern whether what we hear is a subjective view, a conclusion, or an objective piece of information. Everything then merges before us in indistinct shapes, and in seeking ease, we grant our minds rest by accepting opinions and inferences as though they were facts, thereby consigning them ourselves to the domain of dogma. We were first told the Earth is a sphere. Later, they claimed it is oval. Then, once more, they assured us it is slightly flattened at the poles. And at last, the American astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson declares it is not merely flattened, but bulges beneath the equator. It resembles a pear, he says. So which is it that we inhabit? A sphere? An egg? Or a pear? And why such divergence, when any satellite or the Hubble Space Telescope could so easily capture its form? Is it because satellites are not distant enough to capture the Earth in its entirety, and because the Hubble telescope employs techniques that do not permit photographing our own planet? Does that seem plausible? Is it logical that Hubble can capture images of Pluto and the farthest reaches of the universe, 14 billion light-years away, yet cannot take a single photograph of the Earth beneath its gaze? Then what, truly, are we being given? Facts? Opinions? Conjectures? Or deliberate falsehoods? And if you still do not know that we humans possess no genuine photograph of the Earth, by NASA's own admission, then you are merely at the beginning of the path. Once more, free thought is the path of minds in pursuit of truth. A mind that chains itself to ready-made beliefs or follows whims without scrutiny remains a captive of suspicions and fantasies, far removed from the essence of knowledge. Free thought does not merely mean opposing prevailing opinions. It signifies the courage to pose questions, to confront every idea with critical examination, to be willing to change one's view when compelling evidence appears, and to accept truths founded on inquiry and careful scrutiny, a foundational principle for any seeker of profound understanding. Consulting diverse sources and comparing different perspectives are essential steps toward uncovering truth. How many matters that at first glance seemed plain have been transformed once other narratives or independent research findings were considered? Therefore, the mind cannot attain genuine certainty if it is content with what is imposed upon it or with what merely flatters its inclinations. Such complacency imprisons it within an intellectual bubble. Instead, one must practice critical analysis, test the evidence, weigh opposing opinions, and pursue knowledge grounded in both reason and experience, free from slavish adherence to ready-made ideas or absolute authority. Moreover, free thought enhances the capacity for innovation and problem-solving. Those who habitually examine matters from multiple angles until knowledge crystallizes accurately and reliably are more likely to devise creative solutions to complex crises and to discern right from wrong across life's domains. Free thought is the means by which a person breaks the shackles of intellectual rigidity, faces the unknown with courage, and draws nearer to truths that reveal themselves only through research and comparison of varied sources, and through the ability to view matters from every angle without prior bias. It is the safeguard that ensures knowledge is not merely an accumulation of facts but an enlightened understanding that fosters intellectual growth and societal progress, insulated from the contagion of herd mentality, where one loses intellectual autonomy and melts into the opinions of the group, accepting what is popular merely because it enjoys majority currency. This drives people to blind imitation and robs them of the virtue of questioning, the very root of all knowledge. Adopting theories and hypotheses solely because they are fashionable or originate from a scientific or political authority, without subjecting them to the scales of logic and evidence, cultivates a lazy mode of thought and transforms the truth seeker into a mere echo of others. A free mind, however, refuses blind obedience. It subjects every opinion to the criterion of proof and resists the seductive comfort of conformism, knowing that truth is attained only by liberation from this collective prison. History offers abundant testimony to the peril of that course. Countless ideas that once seemed certain collapsed before the proof presented by those who dared to think beyond the flock. This shows that the spirit of free inquiry not only rescues individuals from the bondage of illusion, but also ignites the spark that redirects the trajectory of entire civilizations. Every great human renaissance began with minds that refused to surrender to prevailing currents, insisting on subjecting axioms and assumptions to review and critique, exercising reason and experiment rather than resting in rigid inheritance. Hence, we recognize that free thought is not an intellectual luxury, but the backbone of any civilizational project. It opens doors to innovation and discovery, to reimagining reality and shaping the future, and it instills in humanity the courage to confront falsehood no matter how deeply rooted. We now have two models for the shape of the Earth, one a sphere, the other a flat disk, or rather, a familiar disk beyond which lie vast expanses of land whose bounds none can discern. Let us place each on the scales and begin to question the spherical nature of the Earth. Or more precisely, what are the reasons that make us doubt the Earth's form as we have known and been taught since childhood? But before delving into the reasons for doubt, let us cast forth a simple question and allow the mind to wander toward its own explanation. Why does the United Nations bear the flat Earth map upon its emblem? Now, let us return to the art of questioning. If the Earth truly spins upon its axis and orbits the Sun, and if the solar system revolves within the galaxy, and the galaxy itself courses through the universe, why do we feel none of these motions? And if we answer, because the movement is constant, then why do the stars never alter their forms or patterns of rotation, though we see them all moving within a system of four distinct motions? If the Earth spins, then surely its waters should gather at the equator, even if gravity prevents them from flying into space, as water would on any spinning sphere. Yet why does this not occur? Why do rivers flow smoothly in every direction? And if gravity holds everything upon the Earth's surface so that nothing drifts into the void, how is it at once powerful enough to bind the oceans in place, yet delicate enough to allow butterflies, birds, and even aircraft to ascend and glide freely through the skies? Why does flight, whether of planes or of birds, not vary depending on whether they travel with or against the Earth's rotation? And if we claim, because the Earth and its atmosphere rotate together, such an answer is far from convincing. For while every flying object may initially share the Earth's velocity, it must inevitably lose that momentum at higher altitudes and encounter resistance when changing direction against the planet's spin. Why then does this never manifest? Why do we see birds glide across the sky, altering their flight without struggle? Why do we not perceive the Earth's curvature? Why can we still behold mountains and buildings across vast distances, when by all measures they should vanish behind the globe's arc? Why do flight paths trace such peculiar routes, especially across the southern hemisphere? If the sun is truly vast and unimaginably distant, why do its rays streaming through clouds appear at angles rather than in parallel? If the moon merely reflects the sun's light and heat, why does it sometimes share the sky with the sun without appearing as a full disk? And why is the moon's light measurably cooler than its shadow? Are the sun, the moon, the stars, and the planets truly spherical bodies? Is there irrefutable proof that man has set foot upon the moon? Is the Earth's shadow the cause of lunar eclipses, though no one has ever photographed that shadow from space? Are the pictures of Earth we are shown genuine? Is there, in fact, such a thing as outer space, with its planets, stars, satellites, orbital stations, and spacecraft? We shall examine all of this in due course. But beware, we are tumbling swiftly down the rabbit hole.